Okay, thank you so much for those people putting your names and where you're located. I see people coming from Bhutan, Philippines, Myanmar, Mongolia, someone from Canada who's from Malaysia. Thank you so much, Sunita. And thank you for so much. I know it's like late for you there. We have also Hamiza from the Planetary Health, Alan from Puerto Princesa, and we have, of course, our friends from Arrow. We have people from Bangladesh, from the Research Institute, Afghanistan, from Hawaii, from Jordan. Okay, so maybe we can start while people are probably coming in. So for those that are have just come in, please do introduce yourself in the chat and also yeah, tell us where you're from, which organizations you're coming from. So, good morning. My name is Athena. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening for some people. And thank you so much for joining us across Asia and the Pacific and obviously from beyond. I'm Athena. I'm the program coordinator on gender and climate from UN Women. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's session from Commitments to Capital, Climate Finance for the Belém Gender Action Plan. We are delighted to be co-convening this session today with our friends from UNDP, UNEP, UNFCCC, and our technical partners from the IFC Alliance for Green and Commercial Bank, and together with Arrow. Today, we're trying to create a community on gender and climate finance. And our intention is really for this space to become respectful, inclusive, constructive, and really grounded on the realities of us living in Asia and the Pacific. And we hope all of you will be participating really well, because I see now that you are, because you're putting things in the chat. So please do use the chat option really well and also share your insights while we're going through the whole session. Please also use the Mentimeter later. We'll have Menti sessions also to break some of the sessions, but also to hear back from you. And then we'll also have a Q&A to really also hear from you your insights or some of the questions if you need more clarity. This session is organized together as part of the series convened under the Gender and Climate Finance Collective. It's a regional initiative that's built together to bring really public, private finance institutions, governments, gender advocates, and really climate policy actors to really work on how do we scale, but also make sure that the finance really goes to where it's needed the most. The GCFC, or what we call this, I know it sounds like GCF, but no, it's GCFC. It's a shared commitment to really translating commitments into climate finance systems that works for people and for planet. So today, I mean, it's only what, 2 weeks after COP, and we're really happy to be co-convening this with all our partners to really have a reflection session and really have an exchange post-COP. And I think one of the key outcomes of COP is really having a new gender action plan, which we now call the Belém Gender Action Plan. And we'll go through the sessions today to introduce to you what is currently in the gender action plan and have like discussions around its implementation. So before we dive into the session, maybe I can ask my teammates to maybe put up some of the housekeeping rules. Okay, a few housekeeping rules. I know everyone, this is not your first webinar, but please note that this session will be recorded because we want to share this as much as possible to people who won't be here and really have this as also a knowledge product. Second is really we kindly ask if you can rename yourself with your full name / your organization, because that would also help us understand who's also in the room and we can acknowledge you when you're taking the floor. Please do mute your mic when you're not speaking. And also, please use the chat box for your questions or comments throughout the session. We will be monitoring the chat box as we go. And then, of course, as we always do, please do raise your hand if you want to speak or take the floor. And with that, we'll start first with a Menti session. I mean, it's not going to be a big Menti. So for those who are here, please do. Okay, we're doing presentation mode. All right, for those using your phone or have your phones beside you, please do use your phones to scan the code. And then for those in their laptops, you can go to menti.com 7306 8533. All right. I see 16 people already in the Menti. Thank you so much for 16. Guys, we're around 118 people, so please do come in and take, because this is also our way to understand who is in the room.
Oh,
Well, so that you're coming in, let me look at the chat.
hi,
I
this is
see people
Habiba
from,
Mizat. Just I'm registering for this. I don't know.
I
Do you hear me?
see. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I participate from Calgary.
It's nice to meet you,
Yeah, nice to meet
Nisa.
you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, then I see there's around 61 people plus 25. So that's like 86 people in the chat. I mean, in Menti. So maybe we can begin with the first question. Let's
Hi, this is Mumtaz Bibi from Pakistan. I am a social worker and a field researcher. Thank you.
thank you, Mamta from Pakistan. Okay, so for everyone, please do join the Mentimeter. We want to understand what is your area of work, whether it's gender, finance, it's gender in DRR, humanitarian, um, yeah, interdisciplinary. We actually had a hard time thinking of like what to put as categories because some of you might be working on the nexus of gender and finance or gender and climate. So we wanted to be a bit open just to see where the areas of interests are coming from in terms of this group. Okay, so a lot of you are working on climate finance. That's good to hear. And of course, gender and climate. There's work around environment and research. There's a lot of researchers also coming into this room. Climate security. There's also gender and climate security. Okay. Is there any outliers? Oh, there's someone who's doing space exploration, which is amazing. So happy to welcome you here in this space. So we have also public finance managers. So a lot of us are mainly climate finance people, gender people, climate people are working on the intersection of both. A lot of people are also working on child rights. So that's amazing. Okay, gender and climate. Okay. It's amazing to see that a lot of people are actually working on the nexus already. This is very encouraging. Thank you so much. And gender and development. Okay, then maybe we can go to the next question, which is we want to know, is it your first rodeo with the Gender Action Plan? Have you heard about the Gender Action Plan previously or in its recently adopted Belém Gender Action Plan? So vote strongly disagree if you haven't heard or haven't engaged on the Gender Action Plan before or been part of the Gender Action Plan implementation. And then strongly agree if you've heard, like, worked on it or heard it, read it. I think we're in the middle at this point. So there's because I guess from the first slide you said a lot of you are coming from the climate finance angle. So I guess some of you are not familiar with the Gender Action Plan, which I think is a great opportunity because now we're able to bridge both sides. So 2.7, so there's a lot of people that have heard of it. Um, yes, heard of it, but it seems to me that there's 2.7 out of 5 that has it's also their first time learning about it. So I think our first scene setting session will be very important to see what it is where it's heading, and where it takes the climate finance discourse also moving forward. Okay. So people are still voting. There's like 57 out of 78. Okay. Then maybe it seems to us like it's like 50-50. Some of you know it, some of you are not so familiar with it, but that's okay. We prepared for the session before this to maybe walk you through it. Maybe the last question for the first round of Menti. Thank you so much, Kuya Elmer. What is the main insight that you hope to gain from today's dialogue? I mean, you are spending 1.5 hours of your time with us, so we really want to hear what do you expect to take out of this session. So please do put your answers in the chat. I mean, in the Menti. Why is it important for you to be here and really spend time with us? Okay. You want to understand, of course, the way forward for the gap, apply the gap in national policies, so policy integration, localized gap for some of you. I mean, the gap, of course, is only as good as if it is implemented at the local level as well as at the global national. Funding and research in the Philippines, understanding opportunities there. Of course, learn about climate finance, and climate finance through gender and can someone scroll, please? Okay. Localization, practical applications, and alignment with the Sendai gap. Surely, because there are three gaps that exist, the CBD, the UNFCCC gap, and the Sendai gap. So maybe we'll walk you through there. What actions can I make as part of gap in my work? Thank you so much. So it's more of like what you can do to actually support its implementation as an individual, but maybe you being part of your organization. To know about more about this topic clearly. So a lot of it is really understanding what the gap is, what it's meant to do, what opportunities lie in the implementation of the gap, and how all of you are able to support the gap's implementation in relation to climate finance. So I guess, are there anything else? I mean, we're scrolling to a lot of the answers, but yeah, understand how to apply financing mechanisms under the gap. Okay, then maybe thank you so much for all your participation. So maybe we can start our session now with a keynote first with from our UNFCCC gender team. Maybe we can call on. Okay, sorry. Just to lay the objective of the session, first, of course, and thank you so much for your insights and reflections. First of all, we'll look into the clarifying the financing implications of the gap, examine how the gap commitments or the Gender Action Plan commitment intersect with existing climate financing architectures. We'll try to generate some of these actionable steps, and some of you are here because you want to see how concretely you can take it forward. And of course, this is a post COP30 engagement process where we try to exchange. And I remember one of our speakers was also saying earlier in our practice session that this is a space for us to really synergize all the efforts and scale the activities. So with that, we'll begin with a keynote or a scene setting session together with our UNFCCC gender team. This will be led by Fleur Newman. So Fleur leads the work on gender and climate, as well as the ACE, or Action for Climate Empowerment in Children and Youth, under the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement. So Fleur is a lawyer by training with a decade of corporate law experience working in the areas of climate. She's been in this space for 14 years, and then Fleur is a lawyer by trade. I mean, for everyone who's been in the gender and climate work, I mean, it has always been Fleur who has been the person we lean on in terms of UNFCCC processes. So maybe Fleur, if I can ask you to take the floor, and I think we do have your slides. And I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you very much for the invitation to be here. It is very new and fresh, so it's great to have a first conversation about the Belém Gender Action Plan and its relationship with climate finance and implementation. So for those who don't know the Belém Gender Action Plan, it is the work of many years, but mostly this year, after the adoption of the Enhanced Lima Work Programme on Gender, the extension of the Enhanced Lima Work Programme on Gender for 10 years. Last year at COP29, the process then was to develop the Gender Action Plan this year, and for that to be adopted at COP30. And that involved a number of technical workshops during the year, both in June in Bonn and in September in Addis Ababa, to really work through what had worked for the last 5 years with the previous Gender Action Plan under the UNFCCC, and where there was areas for improvement and strengthening. And so at COP30, the Belém Gender Action Plan was adopted. So next slide, please. And it is an action plan for 9 years from 2026, so starting from the 1st of January through to 2034. And what you can see in the slide there as the background is one of the outputs of one of the workshops that we had during the year, where people were visioning what headlines would look like and how we would get to what we wanted to achieve in 2034 with the Gender Action Plan. So it's 9 years. It has 27 activities across the 5 priority areas that are the same 5 priority areas as the previous GAP, around communication and capacity building and information, around women's participation, leadership, and in climate and decision making and in implementation. It has coherence across the UNFCCC and also across the UN system. So it was interesting to see in the Mentee the reference to the Sendai framework, and as was mentioned, there's also UNCCD, and UNCBD also has a gender plan of action. So looking at these things more holistically across the UN system. And then priority area D, which is the one that it will be of the most focus today, on gender responsive implementation and means of implementation. And here, means of implementation is capacity building, technology development and transfer, and climate finance. And then priority area E on monitoring and reporting. So the 27 activities have 94 deliverables or outputs. It is a 9-year action plan, so there are a number of deliverables. And that includes 20 under the priority area D of gender responsive implementation and means of implementation. The action plan includes a number of firsts, including first-time references to topics of care work, health, and violence against women and girls. And it also references groups, including women environmental defenders, and women of African descent for the first time. The means of implementation priority area also includes, in addition to references to climate finance, it has activities and deliverables around data gathering and application, recognizing that gender data, gender and climate data, and gender analysis are essential tools for implementation. It has activities and deliverables around technology development and transfer, and on capacity building. The activities related to climate finance within the Gender Action Plan, and I think it's very important for us to understand what the Gender Action Plan is and does, and what it isn't and doesn't do. And it is a tool for addressing some of the gaps and challenges and barriers to the effective integration of gender in climate policy and decision making and implementation. And so in the context of the climate finance, one of the things it aims to do is to build a bridge between those who are working on climate finance and those who are working on gender. So like this webinar today, where it's about raising awareness for those who are working on gender and climate about what finance is available and can be used at this point in time. And there is climate finance out there, and ensuring that those who need to know that it's available and how it can be accessed know it is part of the role of the Gender Action Plan. Another activity is around very simply advancing methods to improve gender responsive climate finance. And as I say, this webinar is also part of that process, about creating space also for the financial mechanism under the UNFCCC, as well as the Adaptation Fund, and the Standing Committee on Finance, which is the constituted body under our process that's responsible for climate finance. It ensures that they have an opportunity to discuss what they're doing to progress on the commitments they have and the mandates they have in relation to gender responsive climate finance, and to create a space for that conversation with policymakers. What the Gender Action Plan doesn't do is that it doesn't create any new methods for gender responsive climate finance, and it's not creating a window of financing. However, it is linked to climate finance decisions, to other climate finance decisions. So if I could go to the next slide, please. And this slide, before I go into the finance decisions, no, that's it, great, thanks. Before I go into the finance decisions, I just wanted to show, this is actually from the workshop that we held during the year. And what it shows was some of the thinking behind the development of the Gender Action Plan and when those deliverables would be scheduled. Because what it provides is an overview between now, when the development of the new GAP has been adopted, through to 2034 and 2035 because of Beijing Plus 40 and the fifth NDC round, of how the Gender Action Plan can support the implementation of climate policy and action more broadly under the UNFCCC, and all of the milestones that are relevant in that context. And that includes things like the nationally determined contributions, the biennial transparency reports where the implementation of the NDCs and the NAPs is reported, and which also forms the basis of the next global stocktake, which is in 2028. And so one of the things that's really important to think about when we're thinking about the Gender Action Plan is how it interconnects with all of the other aspects of the UNFCCC process. because climate finance of gender responsive climate policy and action also is linked to the integration of gender considerations in nationally determined contributions, national adaptation plans, long-term strategies for low emission development. And so there is everything is interconnected, but it's very important to keep in mind the other aspects of the action plan, which are also looking at how to better and to strengthen the integration of gender considerations in climate policy and action, because it's climate policy and action which is being funded through the financial mechanisms and through climate finance. But then on to climate finance decisions, and the next slide, please. So importantly, at COP29, there was, and one of the things that we try to encourage our gender negotiators to do is to think about the package that comes not only with the decision under the gender agenda item, but then also all of the other, because gender is a cross-cutting topic, looking across the other decisions that happen at the COP to see how they interlink. And one of the important things about COP29 was, for the first time, the Green Climate Fund was requested to look at how it might support the implementation of Gender Action Plan activities, and that was prior to the Gender Action Plan actually being developed. But there was a reference there about the funding also being relevant in that context. There were also references to gender under the decision of the Global Environment Facility in its role as an operating entity of the financial mechanism, to the Adaptation Fund, and to the Standing Committee on Finance. And that was, they're important because there is this feedback loop between what these financial institutions and the multilateral development banks are doing in this context and the COP. So then at COP30, there are very specific finance paragraphs in the what is referred to as a global mutual decision, which is the decision that will be decision one once they get numbered, but decision one of the COP and the CMA. And there is a reference in particular also to the role of the multilateral development banks and to the financial mechanism, and a request that has been made to increase flows of finance. So those decisions are very specific to the financial institutions, and there are links between those decisions and then the work under the Gender Action Plan, which is about raising awareness about what those decisions are and how they impact climate, gender and climate implementation. And at COP30, there were also references to gender in the Green Climate Fund's, the decision related to the Green Climate Fund, and now it actually references the Belém Gender Action Plan activities, the Green Climate Fund, and the Global Environment Facility and the Adaptation Fund. So all together, and there are other decisions, but those are the sort of main ones related to climate finance. And altogether, the Gender Action Plan decision and these finance decisions make up the landscape of what is expected in relation to gender and climate finance going forward. And so it's always important to keep in mind that the Gender Action Plan is an important tool, but it is a tool for delivering on the commitments that parties have made in relation to gender responsive climate policy and action. And next slide, I think, is my last. So thank you very much. And we're certainly very happy to be contributing, as I say, to this webinar, and looking forward to an ongoing relationship, because this is an ongoing conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Flor, again, for walking us through the whole, not the whole, but it's some of the provisions of the Gender Action Plan. And we really do welcome a lot of the new areas of work, client care as one of the key areas that have been integrated, language around Indigenous people and environmental human rights defenders, and of course, that work around African descent, but also strong, really, I think we've seen the evolution also of the Gender Action Plan from the initial phase until now, where the emphasis is really in the means of implementation, and really looking into how it connects, not only strengthen its language around the means of implementation on climate finance, but its linkages now with other finance decisions across the UNFCCC negotiations. So with that, Flor, I'll ask you to maybe stay on the line, and there's like questions maybe that are popping up around from participants. So maybe now we can do a deep dive first with our panel of speakers, of exceptional speakers. So as Flores mentioned, there are many, many actors in the climate finance space. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but we do really want to bring different voices and see what are the trajectories that they are looking at in terms of, I mean, we have what, 9 years. There's going to be a review in 2029, but we want to see what are the key opportunities that they see, what's evolving in their context, and how do we really work together that can really benefit and really build capacity for women and the most at risk on the ground. So I'll introduce to you first all our speakers, because we have 5 of them. Our first, sorry, what's happening? Okay.
Yeah.
So we have 5 speakers. We have heard from Fleur, who presented the Gender Action Plan, but we have 5 more. We have Her Excellency Dr. Ngin Lina, who is the Secretary of State of the Ministry of Environment. We also have Eleni Kiru, who is the head of Sustainability Inclusion from the Green Climate Fund. And Eleni, you have heard from Fleur also there were decisions, so maybe you'll also speak a little bit more about that. And then, of course, we have our civil society leader, Menka Gundan, who is the program director from Arrow, Christian Torres, who is leading the financial inclusion practice under IFC for Asia and the Pacific. And we have also Umang Vats, who is the regional analyst for UNEP-FI. So I'll start first our discussion with our Her Excellency Dr. Lina Ngin. So Dr. Lina Ngin has been really a champion for gender equality. She's the chair of the Gender Mainstreaming Action Group from the Ministry of Environment. And she has really led a lot of the work for integrating gender considerations into the NDC 3.0, and have really ensured coordination across the ministry and making sure that gender is part of the final output. I would say that Dr. Lina Cambodia is one of the leaders in terms of gender integration into climate policy. So may I ask maybe Her Excellency Lina to take the floor. And the question for Her Excellency is really looking into how does Cambodia plan to translate these commitments under the new NDC into concrete action and to new climate finance systems? And what mechanisms do you see, Dr. Lina, in terms of the most effective in integrating gender? And of course, moving forward, I know it's like a lot of packed questions, like what do you see in this NDC, but also how do you make sure that we align this NDC implementation to the delivery also of the Gender Action Plan under the Belém gap? So maybe Her Excellency Lina, I'll ask you to maybe take the floor. I'll hand it over to you. Kun.
Okay, thank you, Atina. I'm very happy to be part of that the event. I'm very excited because I can see that there's a lot of participants here. It's more than 100. It's close to 160 people to join this event. So from Cambodia, I think that I'm very happy to share with all of you and related with how we prepare the NDC 3.0 and also how we integrate the gender mainstreaming into the NDC document. So I heard from Flo, and you have very well planned action plan for the gender, and also like that the action plan very adopted from the COP 20 COP 13. Yeah. Cambodia NDC officially launched in August 2025 and built on the earlier commitment to deliver integrate and science-based approach to the climate action. So it identified for the, like, I think that is more than 10 priority sectors, and also like include the mitigation and adaptation. And as you may know that Cambodia NDC is is one country that globally that achieve the gender mainstreaming to the NDC, and also that adopt with the comprehensive gender approach into the NDC. That is the process. This one the commitment action across five. I think five dimension of the gender equality. So this is the one that I a little bit share related with the NDC 3.0 set very ambitious greenhouse gas reduction target of I think that 16% unconditionally and up to 55% conditionally by 2035. So this is compared to the business as a usual scenario. So this commitment supported by the Cambodian Climate Change Strategic Plan 2024 to 2033, and the monitoring the action for the climate smart agriculture, and also like align with the Pentagonal Strategy 23 and 2028, and as well as the National Adaptation Plan. Cambodia also stand out for the mainstreaming gender equality and social inclusion. We call JESSI across the NDC. Integration the JESSI into the NDC was achieved through evidence-based assessment, and also multi-sectoral consultation and international coordination. So this is, as we can see, that with the 111 gender measurement of it, 160 demonstrated strong national ownership and ambitious target. So now we have a nice document and clearly identify the key performance indicator. We need to translate it document into the real action with the practical action plan. So it means that we need to prepare JETSI action plan to NDC 3.0. This is we are in having developing and by supporting from our partner, especially UN Women, and also civil society, I think the Oxfam Cambodia. So this is we are in the process to develop a JETSI action plan for the NDC. So I think that is the second is we need further. We don't want to like to leave this nice document on the table, but we really need to like translate into the reaction by supporting and from a relevant sector, especially that we will need to having like partnership with the other development partner and stakeholder as well. So this is one that I want to share. And How we do with this action plan? Because in Cambodia we have Ministry of Women Affairs is the key ministry to co-coordinate with the Ministry of Environment, and also like in ministry we have like gender mainstreaming action group. So like from Ministry of Environment, I have gender mainstream action group. I am the chair women of the gender action group. We use this mechanism to facilitate and coordinate with other development partners and stakeholders. So I think that other ministry, relevant ministry also have a GMAC or gender mainstream action group. So we always like provide a slot to coordinate and consolidate our input, how to prepare the gender action plan. So like today, I think that we have another event in with the Ministry of Interior by integrate gender JC of the climate change into the community investment plan. So this is a very strong mechanism to be integrated. So related with the role of institution, I think that is the first we need to like a political will, because we adopt the NDC 3.0. We adopt with ambitious target and key performance indicator. But if we don't have any like strong support, political support or political will, I don't think that is really implemented this action plan. And the second, I think that the Ministry of Economic and Finance is one key that should be decentralized or allocate funding to the implement of the KPI or that gender action plan, and also that the Ministry of Environment also play the important role to coordinate and facilitate with other bilateral and donor, especially GCF or Green Climate Fund, to declare what they need to support in the action plan, and to be clear that even like Cambodia, we have like mitigation, we have that adaptation, key enabler and cross-cutting issue, and totally that we need more than 33 billion US dollar for to implement this one. And the part of the enabler and cross-cutting is about 700 million US dollar. So this is gender and inclusion is part of that to achieve this image target. So I think that I heard from Flo to present the gender action plan and adopt from the UNFCCC. I'm very happy to be part of that. And so I mean that the stakeholder and donor or that the Green Finance Fund is another one that can support. And from my side, from the Cambodia, we try our best to develop the clearly gender action plan or JC action plan for the NDC. So this is the one that we will like identify the key priority, and also like identify that what is the main issue that we need to do in the first year and second year and so on. So this is the one that we need. And to move forward, I think that we because the JC or gender equality is the cross-cutting issue and the key enabler to achieve the NDC 3.0. We need to like get and consult with the financial institution to support this action plan, and also like further we need that we have to be clear as we mentioned in the NDC 3.0, there are some challenge and gap related with the data, gender and climate data. We try one step with by coordinating with the Ministry of Women Affairs, with the National Institute of Statistics and Ministry of Environment. By support from the UN Women, we have been conduct a national survey on gender and environment. So we primarily use this one as the baseline to be for our gender action plan. So for the next, I think that we need to have a clear M&E framework. I think that is I used to raise the issue to the regional that to implement to be have strong of the gender action gender voice. I think that data disaggregation is very important. So to do so, we need to have like a good reporting. If we have good report, we need like a clearly M&E framework by provide definition of each in a key improvement indicator and target it, and we can monitor and evaluate our action plan. And another one, I think that the capacity building. I think that we very need to promote our people institutional GMAC or gender mainstreaming action group to be have like a capable and capacity to implement that gender action plan. So not just only Ministry of Environment, but other ministry we need also to be clear and have capacity to implement on that. And for further sustainability, I think that
Excellency Lina.
I really
I'm sorry.
like finish shortly.
Thank you.
For the in future, I think that for sustainability, I think that we need to integrate the gender action plan into the community investment plan, because this is the one that they really like in localized financing and human resource in the community. So this is one that we go to close with the people, vulnerable people to the climate change. So this is one that I may need to in the future. So I stop my talking in I will like thank you.
Your Excellency Lina, I think you made really good points. And for someone who is speaking, but thank you, Your Excellency Lina. I think you really made good points in terms of moving it from a beautiful document in the office to really looking into how we can strengthen the architecture, coordination mechanisms that exist already in Cambodia, but also you draw the line also of linking the national down to the local priorities to make sure that it does make changes in the lives of the people that are at the forefront of the crises. So I'll hand it over first now, because I know there is someone and there are questions that will come back maybe later on to Your Excellency. So please stay on the line. But I would maybe ask, because I know, Christian, you're leaving. I know, Eleni, and I'm sorry for moving. But Christian, I know because you're leaving, we heard a little bit from the from the government, but we also know that a way to also scale climate finance is to engage the private sector. So maybe I would want to maybe call on Christian. So Christian is the Financial Inclusion Practice Lead from Asia and the Pacific from IFC. He's been working in this area for 20 years and has really provided a lot of the technical expertise and advisory support to everywhere, Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And his focus has really been on banking strategy, gender finance, and new product development. So maybe, Christian, maybe you can tell us how IFC is really supporting banks to scale gender-responsive climate finance, and what are the opportunities that you see, and also maybe the gaps when it comes to aligning with the decisions on the Belém Gender Action Plan. So maybe, Christian, over to you.
Okay, so thank you very much. It's really my pleasure to speak about the work that the International Finance Corporation does on climate and gender finance, which is a work that not only addresses the challenges posed by climate change, but also ensures that IFC solutions are both inclusive and resilient. Let me start with climate finance. At IFC, climate finance is defined as investments or advisory that delivers a tangible benefit in climate change mitigation and adaptation. This means that we support projects that reduce or addresses greenhouse gas emissions, such as renewable energy or energy efficiency. Equally important, we invest in adaptation and resilience, which basically refers to actions and infrastructure that reduce vulnerability to climate risk, such as climate smart agriculture and water resources management. Our approach is clear. Climate finance should lead to measurable outcomes. In emerging markets in particularly, this often translates to financing to new renewable energy projects and resilient infrastructure. But IFC does, I mean, the work that we do doesn't end there. IFC is also enhancing the capacity of local banks through initiatives such as the Alliance for Green Commercial Banks, to enable local financial players to originate climate loans and to take into account market characteristics as well as gender and social inclusion. IFC understands that climate action cannot occur without any type of social and gender inclusion. That is why that IFC updated the strategy to integrate inclusive resilience, evaluating adaptation and mitigation projects for its co-benefits in gender and social inclusion. And lately, we also have done work at the capital market levels to start looking at sustainable bonds and social bonds that include a gender angle to really be able to promote capital into the market and also close the gender gap. In terms of more details on gender finance, IFC will leverage the private sector role as investors, buyers, and employers to drive inclusive capital allocation, integrate women in supply chain, and create more opportunities to women employment and leadership. IFC also positions equitable climate actions as a cross-cutting priority between its gender and economic inclusion roadmap. To build capacity, IFC delivers peer learning programs on specific sectors and topics, bringing companies together, or I would say private sector players together, to share knowledge and make commitments to close the gender gap. And in many cases, those initiatives have a very strong climate angle. For example, initiatives like the Climate to Equal, the Energy to Equal, the She Wins Climate are just a few examples on how we are building women's leadership and technical capacity in climate sectors, directly supporting the leadership and capacity building goals championed by the Belém initiative. Additionally, programs or initiatives such as IFC Finance Gender Smart Climate Action Guide in Fiji provides practical guidance for tourism sector companies in Fiji to integrate gender considerations into climate adaptation and mitigation. This is just one of the different initiatives that we have tailored or we have actually put together as part of our advisory programs in order to both merge gender finance as well as climate initiatives. So in other words, IFC, we are trying to really, or we are already trying to address some of the areas that were mentioned in the Belém initiative from or the current gap initiative that we are discussing. IFC also provides tailored advisory services, gender assessments, and peer learning programs to help our private sector clients strengthening gender equality within the organizations, whether it is promoting women representation in non-traditional roles, or supporting respectful workplaces, or empower women-led small and medium-sized enterprises through our Banking of Women program, which have led, or we have resulted actually, a Banking of Women program has resulted in tangible results in helping women micro entrepreneurs and women small enterprise owners to really lift themselves out of poverty and creating really opportunities for them and their families. And something that's important to also mention is that all our projects set measurable targets for women participation and leadership. Also, we align with the Belém's initiative emphasis on monitoring and reporting. As a matter of fact, in 2024, in our fiscal year of 2024, over 50% of our climate projects included gender interventions. And also we measure those gender interventions as part of our investments. Part of our additionality or the impact or the way that we make sure the impact of our investments include gender as well as some indicators on climate. So in summary, IFC is very much committed to embedded gender inclusion within climate finance. We have already set targets and requirements for social and gender inclusive interventions in our investment and advisory projects. And those interventions can also be linked to specific indicators on climate or green finance. So overall, the idea is IFC, we are trying to promote both sustainability link investments or loans that will have the angle of both gender and climate. And I will stop here. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about the work IFC does on these two topics. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christian. And I know you have to leave. So if there are people who probably they do have questions on like what are the different, because you've outlined a couple of things. So you've started with the priorities of IFC in terms of sustainability and green financing, but you also provided some examples of concrete products you are providing,
Exactly.
but also, yeah.
So if
So
they
maybe
have any
if people-
questions, feel free to reach out to
Yes.
me and I can actually, or send me those questions and I can reply by email.
Oh, thank you so much, Christian. That will be very, very well. I will do that for you. And then thank you so much. If people do have questions for Christian, please stay and put in the chat. Thank you so much, Christian. And thank you for joining this meeting. Okay, then with IFC providing a little bit of background of how they do investments and gender being one of their priorities and criteria, maybe we also want to reel back into, because I know Her Excellency Lina mentioned GCF, and it's one of the key financing that they were thinking of in terms of really delivering some of that 700 million, if I remember correctly, in terms of cross-cutting investments that needs to be put. So we have a person from GCF. Thank you, Eleni, for really taking the time. I know GCF is one of the critical financing in terms of adaptation, but also mitigation. And I know there's some developments that are happening in GCF, and we've seen Fleur in her presentation in terms of the decisions this year. So just for everyone's information, you have her bio on the screen, but Eleni is the Sustainability and International Development expert. She heads the Sustainability and Inclusion unit under the Green Finance, the Green Climate Fund. And she really draws her expertise from applied practice across a range of professional engagements, from academia, multilateral funds, and she really has been very passionate and really working on equity and social inclusion for the longest time. So Eleni, maybe you can give us a background on the work of GCF and also what is happening currently on your work on gender.
Thank you so much, Athena. Delighted to be here and very honored by the company of both keynote speaker and my fellow panelists. So just to say, if IFC colleague really created a very nice segue into discussing finance and climate, and everybody has been speaking about GCF. So it was Her Excellency Lina, Fleur. GCF is the financial centerpiece of UNFCCC in the Paris Agreement, and as of late 2025, we've built a portfolio of about 336 approved projects in 134 countries, representing 19.3 billion US in GCF resources and approximately just under 80 billion US where expected co-financing is included. So there's also there's what we have put in as resources and the total resources mobilized. And I just want noting that gender sensitivity and is there in a governing instrument, and we have a gender policy since 2015 that has been renewed in 2019. We also have an organizational gap that is our, compass in how we deliver on this policy. Allow me to just put also another element on the table that is important, namely that last year at UNGA, my executive director, set out GCF's 50 by 30 ambition and vision. And this is not just about having 50 billion in climate finance managed, under our management by 2030, but it's very much about the impact of those 50 billion. And in that sense, that's where I see GCF playing really a pivotal role in advancing gender equality in climate action, which includes empowering women as entrepreneurs. Our gap has been around since 2020, and I truly welcome the opportunity of this webinar because, as I also told you in our prep session, Athena and colleagues, we have actually delayed the renewal of our own gap in order to see the Belém gap come to life, because we obviously wanted to build on that on that gap and see how we can reinforce it. So, as in COP29, COP30, references to GCF in the gap are very, very welcome. In going forwards, we will, we currently have our gender action plan has 5 priority areas, and through that gap, we are committed to ensuring mainstreaming of gender in our governance, competency and capacity development, both internally and externally, resource allocation, again, both internally and externally, accessibility and budgeting, operational procedures, knowledge generation and communication. We will continue our commitment in going forward, and I can assure you with increased ambition and rigor, supporting the implementation of UNFCCC's gap across the various priority areas, with some having very direct, explicit linkages, whilst in others we may be doing that through indirect contributions. And I take this opportunity, if I may, to highlight that the update to our gap will, follow very much the process of the UNFCCC's Gender Action Plan, which means that we will be, we intend to be consultative, and we will want to engage various stakeholders. And once I'm done with my speaking inputs, I will be putting in the chat an email, and I welcome all those in our audience who really want to engage and provide feedback to our gap, to reach out and register their interests in doing so once these consultations will take off next year. Now, our update, the way we think of it is that alignment will be maintained. We will be driven, and strengthening that drive very much around just transition. We will seek to support, to the extent possible, national gender and climate change focal points, strengthen systems to ensure structural barriers to women's engagement in leadership. And we do foresee one novel dimension there, and this is we will be explicitly flagging our gender lens investing, our intentional gender lens investing. We're still deliberating on the flagships, as in the lighthouses that will be guiding that intent, but it very much, it quite possibly will be around women entrepreneurs in the green and blue economy. So really supporting that transition in going forward, and also supporting smallholder farmers on the adaptation front. Other than that, we're clear that we also want to strengthen intersectional elements in our gap. So where we speak, since we do have also an Indigenous peoples policy, we want to be stressing also that intersectionality in our work and our investment intent also in the gap, address men and boys as allies, and look at care work, health, and gender-based violence in climate action. We have financed so far a number of NAPs and NDCs, including in the Asia-Pacific regions, and I'm sure Her Excellency Lina is probably aware that, you know, a number of our readiness funds have also benefited Cambodia recently on one on environmental and social safeguards and gender roster in the country. So on this point, what I do want to stress, and I'll finish with that, two calls to this audience. The first one is that we are having a 500 million US readiness commitment. This is the biggest readiness pot out there. So I do encourage our accredited entities to really take advantage of that commitment. This huge capacity building initiative. Each country can access up to $4 million US dollars, and if you're a small island developing state, you can that amount can be even higher, and build your country platform, deliver and implement your NDCs and NAPs, and build your investment pipeline, and you can really use that to integrate a strong gender dimension therein. And the second call for action I'm putting out there is know that from now that since our gender action plan is coming up in 2016, and it will have an explicit gender lens investing, we are start working. It's a rallying call. Start working. We do want to receive funding proposals with a strong intent on gender. With a gender angle, with women's economic empowerment and women's resilience. So please prepare those funding proposals. We really want to see them. Part of the gap will also come with strengthened metrics from our side. We're putting in place a number of conditions that will strengthen our role in this space, and I really hope that you help us and you join us on this journey. Thank you so much, and back to you,
Eleni, and thank you so much. I think that was thank you for ending with a call to action. And guys, you heard Eleni. There is an opportunity to provide feedback to GCF's Gender Action Plan. So when that time comes, please do, and maybe we can also help Eleni circulate it with our network here in Asia and the Pacific, that it comes back, concrete feedback comes into the GCF, but also maximizing the readiness fund that is available to really embed strongly not just as a tick in a box, but really looking at long-term outcomes that can make the changes on the ground. Okay, thank you so much, Eleni. I'll hand, because you ended with participatory, inclusive processes. We have a strong civil society partner also who has been working with us in really strengthening the integration of gender across different platforms, both at the national and regional, at global levels. Maybe I can call on Menka Gundan from Arrow. So Menka has really been, she's the program director for Arrow, and has really been working on women's rights, gender rights. She's worked at the International Women's Development Agency, Women's Fund Fiji, Cardno. So she's been in the gender space for a long time. So Menka, I mean, you've been there. You've done national, regional, and you've been supporting at global as well, in terms of the negotiations and really thinking. Can you tell us what are the key enabling conditions that needs to be met to be able to deliver on the commitments under the GAP? And what role does our women's rights organizations and civil society need to be in place to be able to support that, or for us to support them, I guess is the question, but it's a question of accountability. So Menka, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Athena. And also thank you to my fellow panelists for really, setting the scene in terms of what I was about to speak on. But to I think to start us off, definitely in terms of where we're sitting at now with the Belém Gender Action Plan, it really paves the way in terms of language, in terms of some new inclusion, especially around priority area D, like Fleur mentioned, to set the scene into what and the types of things that we want to talk about from enabling mechanisms perspective. So definitely Her Excellency talked about political commitment and accountable institutional architecture. That is, a good starting point nationally for governments to formally adopt the GAP into national processes. That would be an important step. One of the things that we do recognize, as some of us have been working on different analysis to see where we are at with GAP, but also in terms of our NDC 3.0, etc. We do recognize that different countries across the Asia Pacific region are at different places when it comes to the implementation of gender responsive climate action. So having these clear national adaptations, whether it be through a national climate change gap or through a specific JETSI integration in climate change policies domestically, there needs to be this fundamental, measurable aspect that gets integrated nationally. And then we have a strong sense of conversation around capacity strengthening, which I think needs to be something that is done sooner rather than later, especially something that integrates on how we've been talking about fundable, measurable, implementable actions in the intersection of climate and gender, and also bringing in the climate finance aspect. That is something that would really start us off in terms of, and I think it was mentioned earlier in terms of financial readiness. That type of technical support, the fiduciary systems that need to be in place, gender responsive M&Es, peer networking, all of these we already know and we talk about. And I think it's time for us to be able to work together to be able to implement those in the region. So what would these capacity strengthening initiatives look like? Who and how to do it, particularly in the first part of the 9 years of GAP that we are looking at. Which brings me to what, Athena, you introduced me with, was this strong multi-stakeholder coordination. And I think that has been a good enabling factor in the region, and we're certainly seeing that as a community of practitioners who come together to see the integration of not just gender responsive climate action, but also gender and climate finance. We already have the Gender and Climate Finance Collective, the Gender Responsive Climate Action Community of Practice. And I think what we need to see a stronger sense of is these mechanisms not only linking civil society, multilateral, intergovernment, academic actors or scientists, but also linking in terms of state actors, ministries, policymakers, etc., that would really, reduce the fragmentation and enable pooled and co-financing for gender transformative projects in this region. Accountability, transparency, reporting, yes, definitely. I think this is where the CSO does create a big leverage in terms of holding government and financiers accountable. But for that to happen, there needs to be strong gender data that is, collected. We need to have strong gender markers, gender tagging, all of these things integrated within climate targets and indicators for different countries as a region as well, and then globally within our SDG targets, and not just within the UNFCCC targets and indicators. So that type of integration is there, and that type of cross-learning happens not just in a silo related to climate and UNFCCC, but also related to the Sustainable Development Goals and the broader global architecture and reporting that we have. In terms of, looking at some of the more some entry points, I think as we are looking at NDC, NAPS, etc., some countries in the region are still looking at the submissions and revision processes. There will be opportunities, as Fleur was presenting the timeline. There will be future opportunities as well within the 9-year period when revisions do take place. I think there needs to be further strengthening of gap-aligned measures, budgets, and gender targets, and this, in this way, most directly in terms of channeling national climate budgets. And I think this is what Christian talked about in terms of the example from Fiji. So we need to see more of that in terms of climate financing and that type of integration where the pathways are linked to the national budget and financing process. And in terms of, mobilizing climate finance actors in a more efficient way, especially for women's leadership, we have talked about a push for funders and funding entities to have dedicated, simplified, small grant windows. But what do they look like? How do we integrate it with the national accredited agencies or regional accredited agencies? I think there needs to be this, awareness that is being created. But also, this is where, as I said, we already have, mechanisms where we all are coming together, play a role in terms of making each other aware of these opportunities. And I've also talked about gender markers. I think that is a really important step in terms of data. Using a clear gender marker, mandatory gender budget lines, and at least setting aside a percent for local women's organizations in the bigger facilities to really enable those activities that we talk about in the Gender Action Plan to happen. And as I round off, I would, urge people that these are not things that, certainly that we have just, come with individually. Most of these things that I talked about have come through a series of dialoguing, and the most recent one happened just before we all went for COP, was during the Asia Pacific Adaptation Network forum that happened in October. And there's a set of policy recommendations that we all have worked towards. And all of these that I just talked about are in those. And, we've talked about thematic areas like climate finance, women's leadership, data. And so I think this community of people that we are creating, and a lot of you are on this call, needs to be sustained. That momentum needs to be sustained, and we need to continue working together, not just talking to each other, but working together in terms of implementation and supporting each other in terms of the different skill sets and expertise we get. So I think that's a good round off, and definitely we see those synergies that we talk about in the region, in the gap at this point in time with, with language around gender disaggregated data, with language around women's leadership, with language around women, environmental, human rights defenders, and with language around on capacity strengthening. So we're at a good place in terms of language and in terms of conversation. I think we have to build ourselves in terms of now putting that into action. Thank you. Over to you, Athena.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Menka. And thank you so much for highlighting that these are recommendations that did not come from a single person or single organization, but this has really been built through practice that have been done through the last decade or last 2 decades around the gender and climate intersection. So thank you so much, Menka. We have one more speaker, and I would like to call on Umang Vats, who is the regional analyst for UNFFI. Umang is sorry. Okay, Umang has been working for over 5 years in the area of sustainable finance. And she has really been working with us as part of the Empower program to really work with different financial institutions on integration of ESG. And then in her current role, she really supports around regional coordination in engaging Asia Pacific members and collaborates with regulators, financial institutions to strengthen capacity and address sustainability challenges. Umang, thank you so much for joining us today. We really want to know how UNFFI not UNFFI, but financial institutions can really look into integrating gender and climate strategies better. And thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Athena. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, my fellow panelists, for making the next 7-8 minutes that I have very easier and setting the context. I will share my screen. Please give me a moment. Athena, please let me know once my screen is visible.
Not yet, Umang. We can't see.
So I've sent the request. Till the time this is getting sorted. So my name is Umang Vats. I am based in Delhi. And as Tina said, I work with UNFFI. UNFFI is a global collaboration between the United Nations and the global financial sector. We have been working with financial institutions for the last 30 years, helping them to navigate the sustainability landscape. We work primarily with two sets of financial institutions. One is the banking community and one is the insurance community. I think I'm able to share my screen, so just 1 second. Perfect. So as I was saying, UNFFI works with banks and insurance companies via two frameworks. For banks, we have Principles for Responsible Banking framework, and for insurance companies, we have Principles for Sustainable Insurance framework. Globally, we are working with 550 financial institutions. In Asia Pacific, we are working with 15 countries. The highest membership that we have in Asia Pacific is from China, followed by South Korea, then Japan, and then Australia. In APAC, the financial institutions that are part of our framework have 98 USD trillion under management. Now coming to the meat of the topic, which is how does gender relate to improving ESG or sustainability outcomes for financial institutions? So whenever we talk about climate change, we talk about three aspects. One is people, planet, and profits. Most of the times, the reporting which happens as a part of the endeavors which financial institutions or corporates are doing for these three core topics, people aspect is often the most overlooked, and that is where gender mainstreaming sits. Just to help you with 2-3 examples of the research which has already been done on how financial institutions are able to perform better when they focus equally on the people aspect as well, similar to how they are focusing for planet and profit aspects. So Johannesburg Stock Exchange did a study in 2024. They looked at the financial performance of all the firms who had either a women CEO or had more inclusion in context of the board diversity. And they saw that the financial performance improved exponentially for those listed firms, for those listed financial institutions who had more diversity either in their boards or had a women CEO. Then another case study which happened in 2024. So financial institutions who had exposure to high conflict areas and who integrated due diligence of gender-based violence into their risk management framework, they were able to mitigate risks much better than the financial institutions who had not integrated this aspect in their risk management framework. So UNFCCC published a guidance on advancing gender equality and women empowerment. This is a blueprint which we feel all the financial institutions who want to integrate gender mainstreaming practices better in their business strategy should refer to. So there are 4 aspects of this guidance. First is gender responsive leadership and work environment. So unless the financial institutions themselves make the environment more safer, more enabling for their women workforce, then the other 3 aspects, I mean, it's like a chain reaction. You first take care of the issues, or you take care of the gaps which are applicable for your own organization, and then you come to the rest of the entire system. So first one is ensuring that gender responsive leadership and work environment is integrated for the organization. So it includes bank's role as an employer in providing decent work in which employees of all genders, roles, and levels participate fully. Then second is portfolio shift. So as banks, we have, as a part of banking community, all the banks have great responsibility as financiers, and they have the power to shift how climate finance is utilized. So portfolio shift, which is the second aspect of this guidance, considers how banks as financiers can drive changes in the real economy through corporate and business clients by integrating gender-focused criteria into due diligence processes and aligning financial flows with gender equality and women empowerment objectives. Third is financial health and inclusion. So looking at gender not as a core topic or not as just one KPI, but looking it as a part of the entire theory of change for financial health and inclusion. And finally, ecosystem shifts, where we consider bank not just as an individual entity, but as a part of the larger ecosystem. So its relationships with regulators, with civil society, with other organizations. So these 4 are the outcome areas which are listed in this guidance, and the way they connect with each other and the way business strategies are formulated for each of those outcome areas then relate to the components of women empowerment. So when we say women empowerment, it has 3 core elements. So first one is that women are able to exercise their agency. Then the systems which women operate and are transformed within. And third is if women have equal access to resources. This is again a conceptual understanding of how the 4 outcome areas affect women empowerment, and then they contribute to gender equality and advancement in workplace, marketplace, and community. There are also few solutions which are, or few representation of how we can measure the change when it comes to gender mainstreaming using these 4 outcome areas. So few KPIs which have been given as illustrative examples include percentage of women customers supported to improve their financial literacy, the number or percentage of women customers with savings account compared to the number or percentage of men customers with savings account. And this guidance also includes the checkpoints which a financial institution can follow to ensure that the gender strategy that they develop for their financial institutions is holistic. One case study which I feel is very relevant. So in India, it was realized that women were not using their savings account because they felt that savings account or using banks facilities are limited to larger amount of money. So one of the biggest public sector bank in India realized this, and as a part of their existing initiative, they started training women to start using their dormant savings account, and they developed a mobilization solution called Jandhan Plus to activate these dormant account and then drive savings deposit. So this solution was developed using unique women-centered design methodology similar to the outcome areas that I highlighted in the earlier slide. So the result which happened as a part of the financial institution realizing this gap, so it gave them access. So the women customers, it gave them access when needed. It created a credit footprint and enabled economic resilience. It also gave women opportunities to access other financial products once they were better known customers to the bank. I think this is also relevant for a lot of other Asian economies because women still perceive banks as intimidating, emotionally distant spaces, inconvenient, than a place where you save large amounts of money and not small sums. Then just highlighting few recommendations for financial institutions, which are also included in detailed in the guidance. First is ensuring that you build internal capacity and use, allocate resources accordingly. Then there are certain interoperability challenges and the need to include gender as a part of the climate nature linkage. Then inefficiencies in tracking gender disaggregated data, then inefficiencies when it comes to location specific data, and finally disclosure challenges. There are few resources which I compiled, which I feel all financial institutions or anyone who wants to understand more on financial institutions' role in ensuring gender mainstreaming can refer to. So once you have access to these slides, please feel free. These are the most updated resources which can be used by any financial institutions or anyone who wants to understand more on financial aspect. And it also the guidance also mentions how gender relates with the existing disclosures and frameworks which financial institutions are adhering themselves to. So thank you so much for giving me this time and opportunity. And back to you, Athena.
Thank you so much, Umang, for really sharing with us that there are guidance that is available for financial institutions to really strengthen the work that they do on gender integration, especially within their green and climate portfolios. So, Umang, we have gone past 12:32 now. We're 2 minutes after the time. But if you would allow us, for people who can stay a little bit more, maybe for 10 minutes more, we wanted to open the floor for 2 questions because there were so many of you who reached out in the chat and have asked questions. And thank you so much, Floor, and also Eleni for answering some of those questions. But there are 2 questions that we wanted to maybe do for everyone. One is for Her Excellency Lina. Her Excellency, the question is, can you explain how the Ministry of Finance, together with the Ministry of Environment, has their roles in supporting the implementation of the Gender Action Plan? And are there specific mechanisms by Cambodia to translate the gap into measurable targets? I mean, you also explained earlier the objective of creating its own, your own GEDC action plan, but maybe you can expound a little bit more on the role of the Ministry of Finance. And then maybe for Eleni, there was a question from, I think, Sarah. This was your question. What opportunities are there for women's rights funds to access GCF, climate finance, when they are not accredited entities? I think this is a recurring question that has been spoken not just by mostly by civil society, but also by other actors. How do we then create this ambition with this new gap that is upcoming? Okay, I'll hand it over to Her Excellency Lina, maybe for 2 minutes, and then also Eleni for 2 minutes, and then we'll close to just summarize.
Okay, thanks so much, and thanks for your question. I can see in the chat it's many questions that question to me and related with the public finance or like the role of Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Economy Finance to support that implementation of the Gender Action Plan. I think that is the first. I would like to say that we have like a strong mechanism, one what we call national what we call NCSD, National Coordination Sustainable Development, and this is the chair by the Ministry of Environment and the co-chair by Ministry of Economic and Finance. So this is the one that we can use this to mobilize and advocate to get the fund. And second, Ministry of Environment, we have like a social environmental foundation. So this is one that the co-chair, the mechanism co-chair by Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Economy and Finance. We use this funding part of that, but frankly speaking, that so far is a very little that we can absorb that fund to support the gender action plan. So this is from this one. I think that is another issue that we can like having the clear that the gender action plan or that JETSI action plan for the NDC. So this is the one that we can move on to receive fund. And another one, Ministry of Environment as a coordination body that facilitate in liaison with other development partner and like GCF or that another Green Finance Fund. So this is one that we also like have the dialogue, and our minister played an important role. Like he went to join the COP30 and he tried the best to meeting with the stakeholder and bilateral to like propose the support to our NDC 3.0. As I mentioned that to implement this one, we need more 33 billion US dollar to implement this one, and that another one is related with the key enabler or gender as a cross-cutting issue to be part of that one. And another question, how that we the mechanism we use to like promote the gender action plan or from the COP30. I think that is we as I talked earlier that we are preparing the gender action plan. So this is time that we will have like a national dialogue and to launch and to launch that gender action plan from the COP, and as well as that how Cambodia can prepare the key priority to respond to the COP30. This is another scenario I think that we can do, and also that we need other partner and stakeholder to support us at this time. UN Women and Oxfam as a civil society organization willing to support to be having a good gender action plan for the NDC 3.0. So this is I can start from now. And I can another one to respond to the our friend from Vietnam related indicator and action plan. Any indicator respond for adaptation and mitigation? Yes, of course. We are having like the priority sector like agriculture, follow and waste and energy. So each action plan we have like a mainstream the gender indicator into an action. Okay, thank you. Hand over to
Thank you,
Athena.
Okun, Her Excellency Lina. Eleni, I'll hand it over to you.
Very quickly. So we're aware of the issues. We're aware of the impediments, if you wish. At the same time, I believe it is important for everyone to be able to discern of the scale at which GCF is working. So I think there is different players for different categories of financing, right? So yes, we do work with accreditation. Accreditation has been made easier. We have a revised accreditation framework since last month. And I do invite people on the call to have a look at it. And only, I think, last week, a self-assessment tool for accreditation has also been published on our website. So it might be worth for those interested to also undertake that self-assessment and see how they fare. Obviously, the the immediate solution, the immediate answer is to tell you that, work with your national accredited entities or NDAs if you don't have accreditation. But at the same time, I'll tell you what I've been saying to our indigenous peoples ecosystem, who faces similar difficulties. Don't shy away from accreditation. So I think what's important is not to see accreditation as something that is prohibitive. Yes, it has been a very arduous process in the previous rounds, but it has been made easier, and GCF has committed through this revised framework to deliver accreditation applications within 9 months. So imagine like having a baby, the same process, the same length of time. So our processes have been made easier. We commit to speedier accreditation processes. There is a self-assessment tool for you to check. And other than that, do work with your national credit entity or NDA. What I omitted to say before, I presume that this is something that people are aware, is that a gender action plan is a sine qua non requirement for any funding proposal that comes our way. So we have, in the design of the projects and requirements from our side, we have created placeholders and hooks for those women's organizations to step in. But I step here. Thank you so much. I stop here. Thanks, Athena. Thanks for the question as well.
Thank you so much, Eleni. And yes, work with your accredited entities, but also look into that self-assessment questionnaire, because maybe, it's not meant to be prohibitive, as Eleni said. Okay, we have 129 still in the call. I would just like to say before I hand it over to Vivek that all the materials will be shared back into the website that's in the chat. So we will be uploading all the materials and you will have it. We will also send an email to everyone who's been in this call to share with you all the materials. So don't worry. And then thank you so much for staying. And then I'll hand it over to my partner, Vivek, to maybe share the final takeaways for this session and to close.
Thanks, Athena. This has been a very, very rich, very, very informative and very interesting webinar. I'm sure with the audience of 129, 130, I think this has been a very, very successful gathering. The way it was structured, I think the value came through by the way every speaker contributed from a different perspective, but it all comes together. The initial setting by Flo gave a bird's eye view of where we are on the gender action plan and how it is expected to be rolled out over the next decade. Subsequently, I think from a public finance government perspective, that Her Excellency Lena spoke about how Cambodia would be looking to integrate the JEDC action plan into the NDC 3.0 and take it forward. The GCF aspect was clearly highlighted by Eleni. And the call for action, I hope that the audience took note of the call for action, 2 call for actions, and starts to work on both these calls for action immediately. The private sector element that IFC Christian brought in was interesting in the sense that it targets MSMEs through different tools and instruments, and it has a potential to have a significant impact depending on how gender is mainstreamed into climate action. Simultaneously, we also heard Umang, who provided the takeaways from how to mainstream gender into climate or gender per se into financial institutions. And finally, the need that not only is the public finance required, but private finance is also required to mainstream gender and climate action. But it is very important to engage with the civil society in order to bring about greater transparency and accountability. And for that, Menka mentioned about many aspects related to capacity building, but also a very important aspect on data and evidence and tagging and markers. So altogether, it came together as a very, very holistic set of holistic webinar that brought together different aspects really well. At the end of the day, we should realize that this is not new. We've been, gender has been on the table for decades now. And gender and climate nexus, between that has been, it's not something that we are new, but what can be new would be a renewed focus, a renewed emphasis on how we can make climate finance matter for people. At the end of the day, it is the impact on the lives of the people who are at the most risk of the impacts of climate change. I'll stop there, Athena. Over.
Thank you so much, Vivek, for wrapping up that session. Guys, if we still have one mentee session, I know it's a stretch, right? So if people cannot join, but please do join our mentee, and that's on the screen. We just really want to hear. So this is only the first of a series that we're doing on climate finance and gender. So we really hope to see you in the next. So the gap is the first session, but we will deep dive into specific areas within climate finance that we really can work together, because we're trying to build like a Lego approach of how we move the finance. And I know, Flor, we have until 2034 and 2029 to review, but we really want to see the benchmarks really move and see the targets that we're actually creating outcomes by 2034. So for people that are still in the call, thank you so much. First question.
Thanks.
Yes. Yeah, any key takeaways from your side that you think are helpful for your work? And I see that some of you also asked, like, what's the next step for us? How do we engage? We will be sharing with you some of the materials for sure. That's one. One is we'll share with you the next publications and webinars related to the Gender and Climate Finance Collective. And then maybe we'll also provide you with options of how you can closely work with us to create this ecosystem. And thank you so much for people putting in the chat. Better understanding, gender capacity. Yes, it seems to be across the different speakers, capacity building and technical support was one of the key areas that we need to continuously work together. For the financial mechanisms, for the governments, but also for the civil society people. Need support from UNFCCC. Maybe you will have to understand what kind of support that is, more opportunities for bridging the gaps between international finance mechanism and national governments. And I think, okay, we have 7. Anyone else who wants to share what their key takeaways are? I know it's now, okay, there's more. Gender and climate and the intersection. And then the political will of the state. Thank you so much, Her Excellency Lina. I think you've also showed like what it means to have clear accountability and be a duty bearer in this space. And that political will is one of the key recipes. And maybe we can go to the next. I think that might be more important for us to also hear back from you is what areas would you want us to focus on? Because this one is just an overview. If you have areas that you think are critical in moving the needle for gender and climate, please put it on the mentee. I think, and thank you so much, Eleni. So thank you so much for spending this last 2 hours almost with us.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Kadim and Youth.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much and bye bye.
Okay, for those who still are The Menti is open, so please do share with us. We really appreciate your voices. But for those leaving, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, we still have youth, looking at youth best practices and capacity building. Okay, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us for almost 2 hours. I think next time we'll do better in terms of timing and make sure that we are provide the spaces for you that's available. But otherwise, thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Kupun, maraming salamat.
Assalamualaikum.